Jesus says, "Someone is preparing their heart for marriage with you, and here is how you will recognize them, not through some mysterious, instant identification the moment they walk into a room, but through specific, honest signs you can actually learn to notice within yourself, within them, and within the connection developing between you." Stay with this message. Something in you has likely wondered, at some point, whether genuine, lasting partnership remains genuinely available to you, and how you might actually recognize it clearly when it eventually arrives, distinguishing it from connections that feel exciting initially but ultimately prove unsustainable. This message exists to offer honest, practical reflection on this particular question, rather than vague, mystical promise disconnected from your actual, lived experience. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders soften. Whatever hope or uncertainty this particular subject brings up for you, allow it to remain present as you continue through this reflection, because what follows deserves genuine presence rather than the passing, distracted engagement most content receives during an ordinary day. Here is the first sign worth understanding clearly, since it often gets overlooked amid more dramatic, immediately exciting signs that tend to receive more attention but ultimately prove less reliable. Someone genuinely preparing their heart for lasting partnership with you typically demonstrates consistency, showing up reliably over time rather than only during moments of high excitement or convenience. This consistency reveals itself gradually, through repeated experience rather than through any single, dramatic gesture or declaration. Consider whether the connections you have been drawn toward recently have demonstrated this kind of genuine, sustained consistency, or whether they have instead followed a more intermittent pattern, intense connection followed by unexplained distance, followed again by renewed intensity. This particular pattern, sometimes called intermittent reinforcement, often feels exciting and magnetic precisely because of its unpredictability, yet it rarely indicates someone genuinely preparing their heart for lasting, stable partnership, more often reflecting someone who is either genuinely uncertain, or who is, whether consciously or not, prioritizing the excitement of pursuit over the steadier, quieter satisfaction of consistent, reliable connection. Notice, too, how this particular pattern often produces a specific, recognizable feeling within you, a kind of anxious preoccupation, checking your phone repeatedly, replaying interactions trying to interpret their meaning, feeling generally unsettled rather than genuinely secure within the connection. This particular feeling itself deserves honest attention, since genuine partnership readiness typically produces a settled, secure quality within the developing connection, distinct from the anxious, uncertain energy that intermittent, unpredictable connection so often generates instead. Here is the second sign worth understanding: the specific way someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to communicate, particularly during moments of disagreement or difficulty. Genuine partnership readiness typically shows up through willingness to engage honestly during conflict, rather than either avoiding difficult conversations entirely or resorting to defensiveness, blame, or withdrawal whenever genuine disagreement arises. Reflect on how the person or people you have been considering as potential partners actually handle disagreement, not simply how pleasant they are during easy, comfortable moments, since nearly anyone can appear compatible during periods of ease. The genuine test involves noticing what happens specifically when something difficult arises, whether they remain engaged and willing to work through the difficulty together, or whether they retreat, deflect, or become defensive in ways that leave genuine resolution consistently out of reach. Think about a specific recent instance of genuine disagreement or difficulty, if one has occurred within a connection you are currently evaluating. How did that particular moment actually unfold? Did both people remain genuinely engaged, working toward mutual understanding even amid genuine difference, or did the interaction follow a more familiar, less productive pattern, one person withdrawing, one person becoming defensive, the actual underlying issue left unresolved even after the immediate tension appeared to settle? This specific, concrete example often reveals more genuine information than abstract consideration of how conflict might theoretically be handled. Here is the third sign worth understanding: the specific quality of curiosity someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to demonstrate toward you specifically, your actual interests, your genuine feelings, your specific history and experiences, rather than simply projecting their own assumptions or preferences onto who they hope or expect you to be. This genuine curiosity reveals itself through the specific questions they ask, the way they actually listen to your answers, and whether they demonstrate genuine memory and continued interest regarding what you have previously shared with them. Consider whether the connections you have been considering demonstrate this kind of genuine, sustained curiosity about who you actually are, or whether the connection has felt more one-sided, either your own curiosity carrying most of the conversational and emotional weight, or their attention feeling more directed toward validation, entertainment, or their own specific needs rather than genuine, mutual interest and exchange. Think about a recent conversation with this particular person, recalling honestly how the exchange actually unfolded. Did they ask genuine follow-up questions, building on what you shared rather than simply waiting for their turn to speak? Did they remember specific details you had shared previously, referencing them naturally in later conversation? This kind of genuine, demonstrated memory often reveals more authentic interest than any explicit statement of interest could convey on its own. Here is the fourth sign worth understanding: the specific way someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to handle your independence and other relationships, rather than requiring exclusive attention or becoming threatened by your continued friendships, family relationships, and personal pursuits outside the developing romantic connection. Genuine partnership readiness typically welcomes and supports your full, complete life, rather than attempting to gradually isolate you from other meaningful relationships and pursuits. Reflect honestly on whether the connections you have been considering support and celebrate your other relationships and personal interests, or whether you have noticed subtle, gradual pressure to spend less time with friends, family, or personal pursuits in favor of increased time and attention directed exclusively toward the developing romantic connection. This particular pattern, when present, deserves serious, honest attention, since genuine partnership readiness rarely requires this kind of gradual isolation in order to feel secure and connected. Consider, too, how this particular person speaks about your friendships and other relationships when they come up in conversation, whether with genuine warmth and interest, or with subtle dismissiveness, jealousy, or repeated suggestions that these other relationships are somehow less important or less deserving of your time than the developing romantic connection itself. This kind of subtle undermining, even when not explicitly stated as a direct request for isolation, often produces the same gradual narrowing of your broader support network over time. Here is the fifth sign worth understanding: the specific way someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to discuss and plan for the future, including you naturally within their genuine, ongoing life planning rather than treating the relationship as something disconnected from their broader life direction and decisions. This does not necessarily mean explicit, immediate discussion of marriage specifically, but it does typically involve a general pattern of including you within their thinking about future plans and decisions, rather than consistently keeping the relationship separate from broader life planning and decision-making. Consider whether the connections you have been considering have demonstrated this kind of natural inclusion within their broader life thinking, or whether the relationship has felt consistently compartmentalized, present and enjoyable within its own specific context but curiously absent from broader conversations about future direction and planning. Notice, too, whether this particular person has introduced you to important people in their life, family members, close friends, colleagues, within a reasonable time frame given how long you have been connecting, or whether you have remained curiously separate from these other important relationships and circles despite the relationship otherwise appearing to progress. This particular pattern of separation, when it persists longer than genuinely reasonable given the relationship's overall progression, often indicates something worth examining honestly, even when the specific reasons offered for it initially sound reasonable. Here is the sixth sign worth understanding: the specific quality of respect someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to demonstrate toward your boundaries, your pace, and your genuine comfort level throughout the developing relationship, rather than pushing for faster physical or emotional intimacy than genuinely feels comfortable and appropriate to you. Genuine partnership readiness typically includes genuine patience, respecting your own particular timeline rather than applying pressure toward moving faster than feels authentically right for you specifically. Reflect on whether the connections you have been considering have demonstrated this kind of genuine respect for your own pace and boundaries, or whether you have experienced pressure, whether explicit or more subtle, to move faster than genuinely felt comfortable or appropriate given your own particular readiness and comfort level. Consider, too, how this particular person has responded on occasions when you have expressed a specific boundary or need, whether receiving that boundary with genuine understanding and respect, or responding with subtle guilt, frustration, or repeated pressure attempting to change your stated boundary rather than genuinely accepting it. This particular response, when a boundary is actually tested through real, lived experience, often reveals more genuine information than any general impression of respectfulness formed before boundaries had actually been meaningfully tested within the relationship. Here is the seventh sign worth understanding: the specific way someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to handle their own personal growth and self-improvement, demonstrating genuine, ongoing commitment to becoming a better version of themselves rather than remaining static or expecting the relationship itself to resolve personal patterns and difficulties without any corresponding personal effort or accountability on their own part. Consider whether the connections you have been considering demonstrate this kind of genuine, ongoing personal accountability and growth, or whether you have noticed a pattern of blaming external circumstances or other people, including potentially yourself, for their own personal difficulties, without any corresponding genuine effort toward personal accountability and change. Here is the eighth sign worth understanding: the specific way someone genuinely preparing for lasting partnership tends to speak about their previous relationships and experiences, demonstrating some degree of honest self-reflection and accountability regarding what they have learned from previous difficulties, rather than exclusively framing all previous relationship difficulties as entirely the other person's fault without any acknowledgement of their own contribution or learning. Reflect on whether the connections you have been considering demonstrate this kind of honest self-reflection regarding previous relationships, or whether their account of previous relationships consistently positions them as the entirely blameless party, a pattern worth noting honestly since genuine self-awareness typically includes at least some acknowledgement of one's own contribution to previous relationship difficulties, however modest that contribution might genuinely have been. Here is something important worth understanding about how these particular signs actually function together, since no single sign alone typically provides complete, definitive confirmation of genuine partnership readiness. These signs work best considered together, as a general pattern rather than as individual, isolated tests that any single connection must pass perfectly in order to qualify as genuinely promising. Most genuinely healthy, promising connections demonstrate most, though rarely absolutely all, of these particular signs, while connections that demonstrate very few of them likely deserve more cautious, careful consideration before further significant investment and commitment. Consider, too, that these particular signs apply not only to how a potential partner treats you, but also, importantly, to how you yourself demonstrate these same qualities within the developing connection. Genuine partnership readiness is not something that exists only within the other person while you simply wait to be chosen or recognized. It involves genuine, mutual demonstration of these particular qualities, meaning your own consistency, your own willingness to engage honestly during difficulty, your own genuine curiosity, and your own respect for boundaries and pace all matter equally within the developing connection. Reflect honestly on your own particular demonstration of these qualities within your current or recent romantic connections, examining whether you yourself have been showing up with the kind of consistency, honest engagement, and genuine curiosity this reflection has been describing throughout its content, rather than focusing exclusively on evaluating whether the other person demonstrates these particular qualities. Here is something worth understanding about timing and patience throughout this particular process of recognition, since genuine partnership readiness, both within yourself and within a potential partner, typically develops gradually over time rather than being immediately, completely apparent from the very earliest stages of a developing connection. Some of these particular signs become clear relatively quickly, within the first several weeks or months of getting to know someone. Others, particularly those related to handling significant life stress or genuine conflict, may only become clear once the relationship has actually faced genuine challenge or difficulty together. Consider extending appropriate patience toward this particular process of recognition, allowing sufficient time for these various signs to genuinely reveal themselves through actual, lived experience together, rather than attempting to determine complete, definitive certainty within the earliest, most idealized stages of a developing connection, when genuine information about how someone actually handles difficulty and conflict has not yet had genuine opportunity to become visible. Here is something worth understanding about your own readiness to recognize and receive this kind of genuine partnership, since your own particular patterns and history significantly influence whether you are able to clearly recognize these particular signs when they are genuinely present, or whether old patterns might cause you to either overlook genuine promise or, alternatively, to project promise onto connections that do not actually demonstrate these particular qualities consistently. Reflect honestly on your own particular history regarding romantic connection, examining whether you have tended toward being drawn primarily to intensity and excitement, sometimes at the expense of genuine consistency and reliability, or whether you have tended toward the opposite pattern, perhaps undervaluing genuine consistency because it initially feels less immediately exciting than more intense, unpredictable connection. Understanding your own particular pattern can help you more accurately recognize genuine partnership readiness when it actually appears, distinguishing it clearly from patterns that merely feel familiar or exciting without genuinely reflecting the kind of sustainable, healthy partnership these particular signs are actually describing. Here is something worth understanding about the specific role that self-worth plays throughout this entire process of recognition, since genuine confidence in your own worth significantly influences your capacity to recognize and appropriately value genuine partnership readiness when it appears, rather than either dismissing genuine promise because it feels less intensely exciting than more unstable, unpredictable connection, or alternatively, settling for connections that demonstrate very few of these particular signs simply out of fear that nothing better remains genuinely available to you. Consider your own particular relationship with your own worth as you continue this reflection, examining whether genuine, secure self-worth currently supports your capacity to recognize and appropriately value genuine partnership readiness, or whether some additional work regarding your own self-worth and security might genuinely support your continued capacity to recognize and receive lasting, healthy partnership when it eventually appears within your own particular life and circumstances. Here is something worth understanding about support during this particular process, since navigating romantic connection entirely without any outside perspective often proves more difficult than necessary. Consider whether a trusted friend, someone who knows you well and can offer honest, caring perspective, might help you evaluate whether a specific current or developing connection genuinely demonstrates these particular signs, offering valuable outside perspective that can sometimes be difficult to access when you are personally, emotionally invested within a specific developing connection. If patterns from your own particular history feel significant enough to warrant additional support, whether repeated difficulty recognizing genuine partnership readiness, or repeated patterns of settling for connections that demonstrate very few of these particular signs, consider whether professional support, such as a therapist experienced in relationship patterns, might offer valuable additional guidance as you continue developing your own capacity for genuine, healthy romantic recognition and connection. Here is something worth understanding about doubt, since doubt likely has arisen at some point during this reflection, questioning whether these particular signs genuinely apply to your own specific situation and connections, or whether they represent overly simplified, generic guidance that fails to account for the genuine complexity of your own particular circumstances and relationships. This doubt deserves honest acknowledgement rather than automatic dismissal, though it also deserves genuine examination rather than uncritical acceptance as necessarily representing the complete truth of the matter. Consider whether your own doubt reflects genuine, careful evaluation. Concluding that these particular signs do not genuinely apply to your current circumstances, or whether it reflects something else, perhaps discomfort with genuinely evaluating a current connection honestly, manifesting specifically as skepticism toward the message itself rather than genuine, honest engagement with whatever these particular signs might actually reveal about your own particular romantic circumstances and connections. Here is a further consideration worth holding as you continue reflecting on this particular message and its central content regarding genuine partnership readiness. These particular signs are not meant to create an impossible, perfectionistic standard that no genuinely promising connection could ever fully satisfy. Real, healthy relationships involve real people, with genuine imperfections and occasional difficulties, rather than flawless, idealized partnership free from any genuine challenge or difficulty whatsoever. Consider what it would mean to hold these particular signs as a general, useful pattern to consider, rather than as a rigid checklist requiring perfect, complete satisfaction before a connection deserves genuine consideration and continued investment. Genuine partnership readiness involves a general, consistent pattern of demonstrating these particular qualities over time, allowing for genuine human imperfection and occasional difficulty, rather than flawless, perfect demonstration of every single sign without any exception whatsoever. Here is something worth understanding about what genuinely changes once you develop clearer capacity to recognize these particular signs, benefits extending well beyond simply increasing your likelihood of eventually finding lasting partnership, though this remains a genuine, valuable benefit worth acknowledging directly. Developing this kind of clearer, more discerning recognition also typically produces considerable benefit for your overall relationship patterns and self-understanding, benefit that remains valuable and meaningful regardless of exactly when, or in what specific form, lasting romantic partnership eventually develops within your particular life and circumstances. Consider what this broader benefit might genuinely mean to you personally, recognizing that this particular reflection, and whatever continued reflection it inspires, offers value considerably beyond simply its potential to eventually support romantic partnership specifically, extending into overall self-understanding and capacity for genuine, healthy connection across all your relationships, not merely romantic ones specifically. Consider the specific role that timing and life circumstance play in genuine partnership readiness, since even someone who genuinely possesses all these particular qualities may not currently be in a life circumstance that genuinely supports pursuing lasting partnership, whether due to significant ongoing personal challenges, major life transitions currently underway, or simply genuine timing that does not yet align with your own particular readiness for lasting commitment. Reflect honestly on whether timing itself, separate from the specific qualities already discussed, might be playing a significant role in your own particular circumstances. Examine, too, what specific role shared values play in genuine, lasting partnership readiness, beyond simply the behavioral signs already discussed throughout this reflection. Genuine, sustainable partnership typically requires some meaningful alignment regarding core values, whether related to family, finances, spirituality, or fundamental life priorities, even while allowing for genuine individual differences in specific interests, personality, and preferences. Consider whether the connections you have been evaluating demonstrate this kind of meaningful values alignment, distinct from simply demonstrating the specific behavioral signs already discussed. Consider, as well, what specific role physical and emotional chemistry plays alongside these particular signs, since genuine partnership readiness involves more than simply demonstrating reliable, healthy behavioral patterns. Genuine, lasting attraction and emotional connection matter significantly too, and their absence, even alongside otherwise healthy behavioral patterns, may indicate that a particular connection, while demonstrating admirable qualities, may not ultimately represent the specific kind of partnership that would genuinely fulfill you personally. Reflect, too, on what specific role family and social support play in your own particular romantic journey, since genuine partnership readiness sometimes becomes easier to recognize and evaluate with input from trusted people who know you well and can offer honest, caring perspective on a specific developing connection. Consider whether specific people in your life might offer valuable, honest perspective regarding a current or developing connection, distinct from simply your own, potentially emotionally invested perspective alone. Consider what specific communication styles and love languages play in your own particular capacity to recognize genuine partnership readiness, since people often express and receive care differently, meaning genuine care and commitment might sometimes be expressed in ways that do not immediately match your own particular expectations or preferences regarding how care should be demonstrated. Reflect on whether you have been evaluating potential partners according to your own specific preferences regarding how care should be expressed, potentially overlooking genuine care expressed through different, equally valid means. Here is a final significant consideration before this message moves toward its close. Genuine partnership readiness, whether within yourself or within a potential partner, does not require perfection in order to be genuine and worth valuing appropriately. It requires a consistent, general pattern of demonstrating the particular qualities this reflection has described throughout its content, held together with genuine patience for the natural, gradual timeline this kind of recognition typically requires in order to fully and accurately develop. Release whatever pressure might have accumulated regarding needing to immediately, definitively determine whether a specific current connection genuinely qualifies according to every particular sign discussed throughout this reflection. Genuine recognition typically develops gradually, through continued, honest observation over time, rather than through a single, immediate, definitive determination made within any single reflection or moment of consideration. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final moment for yourself, genuinely absorbing what has emerged throughout this reflection rather than rushing immediately toward whatever comes next in your day. Consider which of these particular signs feel most relevant to your own current romantic circumstances, whether evaluating a specific developing connection, or considering your own readiness to recognize and demonstrate these particular qualities as you continue your ongoing romantic journey more broadly. This does not need to feel dramatic or overwhelming in order to matter significantly. It simply needs to feel genuine, honest engagement with whatever this reflection has helped illuminate, rather than either dismissing this content entirely or applying it rigidly, without appropriate nuance and patience for the genuine complexity that real, human relationships always involve. Trust that this particular message reached you today for a genuine reason, connecting specifically to something real and relevant within your own actual romantic circumstances and history, rather than arriving randomly or without genuine relevance to your particular life. Something in you recognized enough significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have dismissed this message entirely had it genuinely carried no connection to anything real currently present within your own romantic life and circumstances. Consider, too, what it might mean to continue holding these particular signs in mind as you continue your ongoing romantic journey, whether within a current developing connection or as you continue considering future connections that may develop over time. This kind of ongoing, honest evaluation, held with appropriate patience and nuance rather than rigid, perfectionistic application, can genuinely support your continued capacity to recognize and build toward the kind of lasting, healthy partnership this reflection has been describing throughout its content. Reflect, as well, on how you will handle moments of genuine uncertainty regarding whether a specific connection demonstrates these particular signs consistently, moments when the answer does not feel immediately clear or obvious. These moments of uncertainty do not require immediate, forced resolution. They simply invite continued, patient observation over time, allowing genuine clarity to develop gradually through actual, lived experience rather than forcing premature, potentially inaccurate conclusions before sufficient genuine information has actually become available. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something practical that helps translate everything shared today into sustained, ongoing capacity for genuine romantic recognition and healthy connection, rather than remaining simply another moment of interesting reflection quickly forgotten once ordinary daily life resumes its usual pace. Consider keeping some form of honest, private record as you continue evaluating current or developing connections, briefly noting specific instances where these particular signs, whether consistency, honest engagement during difficulty, genuine curiosity, or the other qualities discussed throughout this reflection, actually appeared or notably failed to appear within your actual, lived experience of a specific connection. This kind of concrete, ongoing documentation often proves considerably more reliable than relying purely on memory or general impression, particularly during the earlier, more emotionally intense stages of a developing connection when accurate, objective evaluation can prove genuinely difficult to access and maintain. Reflect on what specific timeline feels genuinely appropriate for evaluating these particular signs within any given developing connection, recognizing that rushing toward premature conclusions, whether overly positive or overly negative, before sufficient genuine experience has actually accumulated, tends to produce less accurate evaluation than patient, ongoing observation extended across a reasonable period of actual, lived shared experience together. Consider, too, what specific role your own continued personal growth plays throughout this process, since developing greater capacity for healthy partnership recognition often develops alongside, rather than separate from, your own continued personal development and healing. If specific patterns from your own history continue significantly influencing your romantic evaluation and choices, whether toward excessive caution, excessive idealization, or difficulty accurately reading these particular signs, continued personal work in these specific areas often supports your continued capacity for genuine, healthy romantic recognition moving forward. Explore what specific support systems, beyond simply the trusted friend or professional support already discussed, might genuinely benefit your continued romantic journey, whether specific communities focused on healthy relationship education, specific resources, or books addressing these particular topics in greater depth, or simply continued, honest self-reflection regarding your own particular patterns and growth areas as they relate to genuine partnership readiness and recognition. Consider, finally, what it would mean to approach your continued romantic journey with genuine patience and self-compassion, recognizing that developing accurate, reliable capacity for recognizing genuine partnership readiness is itself a skill that develops gradually through continued practice and honest reflection, rather than something you either already fully possess or entirely lack. Extend yourself the same patience you would naturally extend to anyone developing a genuinely valuable, meaningful skill over time. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you continue recognizing and building toward genuine, lasting partnership, one honest, patient observation at a time.